Hello, and welcome to our podcast. It's the podcast that lets you know you are not alone. Your guide to mental wellness. I'm your host, Tammy Mack. This podcast is a production of the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, which has been training and educating multiculturally competent mental health care professionals for over 50 years. Yes. Our program is committed to educating our community about mental health and wellness and normalizing conversations about our mental health. Our program will explore mental health and wellness issues that impact us, as well as explore ways that we can improve our wellness. Now, every week, I will be joined by mental and behavioral health experts who will share their experience and expertise to help us on our journey to good health and satisfying lives. Today, we want to focus on ways to stay mentally and emotionally healthy, our wellness. So joining us is marriage and family therapist, Dr. Joi Madison, an adjunct professor at the Chicago School and also a former competitive swimmer and fitness expert. Dr. Madison is an international speaker, coach, facilitator who specializes in trauma-informed emotional intelligence to enhance relational health and improve our overall quality of life. And let's face it, we all want our life to be improved, right? So let's do this. Her coaching, consulting, and curriculum design styles take an evidence-based approach while also centering cultural humility and social relevance. Now, you know I got to find out what that's all about, right? Dr. Joi invites us to connect more deeply with ourselves, more authentically with ourselves, and more readily with the resources that invite you to live your most fulfilled life. Please welcome Dr. Joi. Hey, Dr. Joi.
How are you?
Now, I got to get to the good part. You got me using all these big words, and only half of us don't know what they mean.
Okay.
Cultural humility and social relevance. Please talk about that.
Yeah, so wellness does not happen in a vacuum, right? We all live in communities. We live amongst people. We have families. We have, work, school, all these places where we interact with other people. And so part of our wellness, our understanding of wellness, our experience of wellness has to happen in the context of the communities in which we live. So cultural relevance is about what are my cultural values, what are the things that matter to me that are related to where I come from and the experiences that I have. And then social relevance is like, what's going on in the world around me at the moment? And am I really sort of assessing my wellness with those things in mind?
So what is something that would be culturally valuable to someone? What's an example of that?
So thinking about the Black community, for instance,
Okay.
right? When we think about wellness, oftentimes there's a big conversation about self-care right now. And a lot of that is geared towards sort of the individual, how you care for yourself, which that makes sense, yes, but a lot of the times the way that we're told to care for ourselves or the pictures that we're seeing of what self-care looks like doesn't include things that are a part of our values. We tend to be a more collectivist culture. We tend to be more communal. We like to be together. We like to go to a good cookout, these kinds of things. And so when we think about going to like a quiet spa day, such and such, which, yes, that works sometimes, but that's not always the thing that's our jam.
Oh, my goodness. Ding,
right?
ding, ding,
Right?
ding, ding, because you're right. I get massage
Right.
gift certificates all the time.
Yeah.
And I would rather go to a barbecue.
Listen, like we want to be with our people. And I'm
Yeah,
not saying
I
that
get
those
it.
things don't have their place. But again, going back to this conversation or this question about cultural relevance, it's like, what's the thing that matters to me? Self-care is not just caring for myself, it's me defining what that is for me.
Yeah. So me doing the cha-cha slide at the barbecue is an example of self-care.
Absolutely.
Who would have thought it?
Absolutely.
Because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel a part of something greater than yourself. It's community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
I
sense
get
of
it.
connection.
Cultural humility.
Yes.
We learned already. In the first 30 seconds, y'all, Dr. Joi is teaching up in here. So you seem to be actively exploring the mind-body connection, right?
Absolutely.
So with your background as an athlete, please tell me how you got started on your journey to wellness.
So that's been a lifelong thing, right? It's a family value. So we have cultural values and there's family values. Like my mom was always very active since I'm a child, but thinking about the mind-body connection specifically, I always think it's hilarious when we're like, health and then mental health, as if they're separate.
Yeah.
Right? It's like my brain is in my body and it's all
Right.
part of the same thing. So it's really about thinking, for me, that holistic approach, that mind-body connection is about understanding how our thoughts, our emotions, our sensations show up in our bodies. Right.
Yeah.
And then making sure that as we approach sort of the things or practices around wellness, that we're addressing all of those things and understanding the interconnectivity in those areas so that we are treating our whole selves and not like the fragmented versions of us that I think the world is trying to tell us we're supposed to be.
Exactly. And you as an athlete, your body obviously has to be in shape, but then you have to have the mindset that says, I want to work out, I want to win, I want it. So I get that too.
Sure.
I get how it's connected too. And I remember in grad school, they made a point of telling us that our body is one thing. It is not a whole bunch of different parts.
Yes.
It is a whole.
Yes.
And how you move and how you feel physically affects how you perform. And your mental, it's connected to the character that you create. It's connected to your own personal, individual feelings. But it has everything to do with you physically too. So I'm feeling that too. Y'all learning yet? Okay. So wellness sounds like it's part of the mind-body connection, right?
Absolutely.
And we talked about before. So explain the connection.
Between mind and body?
Yeah.
So the way that I approach it, thinking about, for instance, the word itself, disease.
Okay.
It is dis-ease. When we have unaddressed emotional trauma, when we have negative thought cycles, that influences how we feel and we don't deal with it. It shows up in our bodies. And we have language for it, right? We say things like a knot in my stomach or a lump in my throat or a pain in the neck, or even we talk about being heartbroken. So we have language that expresses this idea that our bodies hold the stories of our emotional selves. We understand that. We have language for it, but I don't think that we are consciously making the connection in terms of how we address that relationship between the mind and body. So it's really about understanding when I think and feel this way, when we're not feeling well and we're like, and you start to feel helpless and all of those things, like it's because my body's not feeling well. And then that's influencing how I think about myself and then how I behave. And then, so all those things are influencing.
I don't mean to cut you off, but you gave me a thought here and I want to know this. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Does the body react to the mind, or does the mind react to the body? What becomes diseased first?
I think it can go either way. The idea here is that it's sort of this exchange, this relationship, right? Which, like me and you, you're talking, then I'm talking, and we're both just right. No, it's a relationship where they're both influencing each other. Yes. Yes.
Got it. It's a connection. Yeah. So one can never work without the other.
Absolutely. They're not.
And
not
one will always
separate.
Influence the other.
Exactly.
Whichever way it goes.
Exactly.
So I can make my body physically sick if I think about it.
You can.
And if I'm physically sick, I can make myself well if I think about it.
You can, because what it tends to do is it's not just the thinking, right? The thinking leads to behaviors. Okay. So if I think a certain thing and I focus on a particular thing and that's all I see in terms of my options and choices, then it's going to lead to me continuing to create the same outcome. But if I start to think differently, I see a new choice.
Girl, you got me praise dancing.
Right?
Joy. Because there are people who are like, your mind can't change whatever you have, but you just made it very clear when you said it's not that your mind changes it's that your mind changes the way you react and it changes your behavior.
Yes, it changes what you perceive. It changes the opportunities that you see for change.
So if I'm thinking, let's just get in my business.
Okay, get into it.
If I'm thinking I'm skinny, right? No. It's not that thinking I'm skinny will make me skinny. It's the things that I think about when it comes to being skinny that will lead me in that direction.
So what I believe about who I am will inform what I choose.
Right.
And so if I believe I'm healthy, then I'm going to choose healthy foods, healthy activities, and eventually the body will reflect that because I am making choices behaviorally that reflect what I believe internally about who I am.
Yeah. Y'all get that?
Right.
It's not the mind that changes the actual thing. It's the mind that changes the behavior of how you get the thing. Girl, you're taking me to church today. I'm sorry. So, okay, we've talked a little bit about self-care, but let's dig a little bit deeper into it.
Sure.
What is self-care, and why? Why is it important?
Yeah. So self-care is exactly that. It is caring for yourself. And the question of why it's important, and I'll contextualize this specifically for this conversation around like Black people and wellness. It's important because it's also a part of not just our wellness practice, but also our liberation practice.
No, I don't know what you're saying.
Okay.
Our liberation.
It is. It's a part of our liberation
How
practice.
so?
Recognizing that historically Black bodies have been used for labor. And then we internalize that that is our only worth. We don't know. For many people, wellness is just the absence of illness.
Right.
If I ain't sick, I'm good.
Yeah.
Right? Like, as long as I can get up and go and do the thing, I'm good.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, our worth is often tied to our capacity to be productive. What can I do? And so self-care is about sort of taking a moment to do some inventory around, okay, not about what can I do for others. What do I need to be well? How can I care for me?
Right.
If that's going to do the wobble at the barbecue, then that's what that is, right? But so it's about liberating ourselves from the idea that we're only worth what we can do for work.
This is, I'm trying to put it into a layman's term, right? I went to a panel and a white man was talking about his independent film. And he was saying how he went to these different investors and he asked for $5 million. The Black people in the room were like, oh, what? You asked for $5 million? So that's a part of that liberation that you're talking about. We would never ask for $5 million because of our history, because of our the way that we've been brought up to not believe that we're even worth that much.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
audacity.
crazy.
The audacity.
Right.
Right.
That's what I was thinking when I heard it. I said, you went to somebody that asked for $5 million?
That was your starting point?
Right.
You didn't work your way up.
That's where you started. Okay,
Right.
let me, hold on.
Let me take notes.
Right, 'cause
Exactly.
I only asked for $20.
Exactly. Right. And was shaking when I went to ask
Right.
for that. Like,
Okay, just make it $19.99 and we'll call it even. So does wellness
Right.
look differently in the Black community than it might look in other communities?
I think, yeah. And I think for the reason that we were just speaking about, that it is very much attached to our liberation, right? And so a lot of times when we think about wellness, particularly around self-care, the conversation that's happening now is that it makes it like a luxury, right? Like you have to go to the spa, and
does.
you go on the vacation,
You have
and
to
you
spend
go
all
to
this
the
money.
things.
Yes.
Right. And so for us, for many of us, that's not accessible. And so it may look different, not just because of the accessibility piece, but also, again, going back to the values piece. Like one practice that I'm really working on just personally is the difference between being tired and being drained.
Ooh.
Right?
Ooh.
I'm tired, I need to rest. I'm drained, I need to recharge. And what I do to recharge may be connecting with people. Maybe for me, going out to surf, spending time in nature, right? Like going to do a thing that feels vigorous or like I'm having to output a lot.
Or that
but that's the
calms me
way
down.
I recharge because that's the thing that fills my battery is being with my people.
What do you do to recharge? What do you do when you're drained? I'm
Personal.
Yes, personally, because you're an
anything
athlete, you're a
creative.
swimmer. I want to know what you do
Yes.
because I
So-
want to do what you do.
I surf.
Okay.
So I love to
You're saying
surf.
surf, like surfboard.
Yeah, surfboard,
So you
ocean.
would have asked for that $5 million too.
I mean,
Because I don't know too many of us surfing.
Today Joy would have asked
Okay.
for the $5 million. I don't know. A couple years ago, I probably would have been. I don't know. But today Joy is. Let me get that 5. But I surf. I create. Like I like to just create for the sake of creating, not for a particular reason or person or to sell it or to do anything, but just to get it out. I have an idea and I want to see what it looks like outside of my head. Right. So I might color. I might write. I might dance. Anything creative in that manner. I also like to just laugh a little bit. Just laugh.
I love laughing.
Yeah, my name is Joy. How can I not?
How can you not be joyful?
Exactly.
How can you not?
Exactly.
So what are some things that I can do to improve my family's or my own wellness? Because should a person be concerned with their family's wellness as well?
Absolutely. And when you say concerned with, I think that, again, going back to our more sort of tribal communal tendency, usually our family's wellness is a part of our wellness, right? I'm good, you good, we good, right? We all we got sometimes, right? Yeah. So there's that. But the question of what can I do is always interesting to me, because it goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is sometimes for us, the question is, what can we not do? What can I say no to? How can I slow down and do less as a way to tend to my wellness? Because we tend to be busy all the time doing all the things.
So as a busy person myself, let me ask you this. Can being busy be a part of wellness?
That's interesting. It could. Now how much time we got? It could. What I would invite people to do is create a practice where you are regularly checking in with yourself. And for me, my understanding of wellness is alignment. Okay. When you feel emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, relationally, even environmentally aligned. And whatever is helping and supporting that process, that then to me could be a wellness practice.
How do we know?
If it's not, then
how do we know whether we're aligned or not?
Oh, we feel it. You know how you feel when something is just off, and you don't really know what it is, or you can't. But this is part of wellness. Wellness is reconnecting to our intuitive selves. It's remembering. We talk a lot about like who we're becoming. Yeah. I like to think about it as remembering who we've always been and peeling back all of the fears and expectations and everybody else what we should have done, or peeling back some of that and just being still and connecting to the truth of what we know, what we feel intuitively, and then making it a priority to make that the thing. That's our new default, right? Not the default setting of like always on the go. Right. Can I change my default setting to what it feels like to feel grounded, to feel safe in my body, to feel like I have agency in my environment? When I can feel that to me is a sign of wellness.
I love it. On that note, you are not alone. How about that? Thank you, Dr. Joi.
Thank you.
I could have done a whole another 30 with you,
Thank
sis.
Thank you so much.
My goodness. But then I'd have had to, you'd have had to invoice me, because I'd be in here.
That's all right. It'll be $5 million.
I love it. You are not alone. It's your guide to mental wellness. I am your host, Tammy Mack. Goodbye, everybody.
The opinions expressed by our guests or host do not necessarily reflect the views of KJLH Los Angeles or the Chicago School. The Chicago School or KJLH Los Angeles are not responsible for the consequences of any actions based on information or resources provided in these programs. The Chicago School and KJLH Los Angeles disclaim any liability related to any podcast content.